Alright, what's up guys? I am finally back. It's been 10 months. I know there's been a bunch of reasons why I haven't made content in almost 10 or 11 months, and mostly surrounding financial issues because I don't feel it was acceptable to make videos if I didn't have a product to talk about or something to talk about. So I took time away. Didn't know I was ever going to come back. I've been extremely busy the last little while with work and everything else going on in my life, but however, with that, I was able to finally build my first computer. And there's definitely some lessons I've learned with it, some things I would do differently, and an issue that came up that seemed to stump every tech person that I talked to across my city and including online as well too. So let's get into that. Let's get into my build, how it went, and let's do this. All right, so as I was saying, I built my first computer. I put together a build sheet that I had dreamed of putting together, and I'm going to tell you right now that changed vastly. Just about everything inside of the computer was changed from my list. My list is not even close to what actually went inside of this, and there's a bunch of reasons why. Let's get into that. So first off, let's take the side off. I apologize if the camera hops a little bit. It's on a weird little tripod thing that is attached to my desk that is causing some severe shakes. So there's my computer. Set that aside. And let me see if I can just adjust this a little bit again. Sorry if the camera shakes here a bit. All right, that's about as good as it's gonna get. So case-wise, I've got a Lianli A3 Micro ATX case, which was not my original case choice, but my wife chose it because it's the only case that I can convince her to allow me to put in the living room. Now, by that I don't mean she was controlling me. It was more or less that nobody wants a gigantic computer tower sitting in a living room that doesn't match the aesthetics that she was going with, which I understand. So, Lianli A3. Now inside of here, I've got the Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120 SE cooler in the black. It's a dual tower cooler. Sorry, my monitor's in the way so you can't really see. See if I can pull this ahead a little bit. There we go. That's a little better. And adjust this a little. There. Perfect. All right. So again, thermos. If I could talk, this would be incredible. Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120 SE. See, here's the thing. When I stutter or say things wrong, I'm not going to cut it out. I want to give you raw, unedited, just who I am. Sometimes I stutter. It's just the way we go. Anyways, so there's that for the cooler. I've got a Ryzen 7700X processor in there. I've got the Kingston Fury Beast 32 gigabyte 30 cast latency, 6000 for speed. Dual RAM kit I've got in there as well too. Kind of hidden by the cooler, can't really see that. Now, I'm going to touch on the motherboard in a minute because there's where one of my issues lied. Graphics card, I've got an Asus Prime 9070 overclock edition, not the XT. Price difference was about 300 bucks where I live. I couldn't justify it for the marginal difference, especially this being my first computer. Fans in here, I've got two different kinds of fans, up top and on the back. In there, I've got the BeQuiet Light Wings fans. They're 120 mil fans. I've got 4 of them, 3 of them set as to exhaust here. I've got a rear exhaust. And then on the bottom, I've got 2 of the Thermalright 120 mil fans. As far as the model number goes, I don't know it offhand right now. I'll put that in the description below what they are, but they're very close to the ring that is on the BeQuiet fans. A little bit thinner, but very close anyways. Matches my aesthetic that I was going for. Now, the power supply, I've got a 1000 watt Corsair SFX power supply in here. That is one of the things I would probably change. I didn't need to go as crazy of an expensive power supply in there. It cost like 350 bucks. Definitely an overspend on there, but my options were limited and then I got tired of waiting. So, continuing on, the motherboard now is the Aorus Gigabyte B850M ICE motherboard. Beautiful motherboard, absolutely love it. Even the little Wi-Fi thing is super, super cool. Now it is a white motherboard instead of a black case with black components. Maybe it stands out. I don't know. I don't totally mind it. I think it looks pretty cool. I might even change these fans to white, get a little bit of a Stormtrooper theme going. I don't know yet. It's a work in progress. Now, that motherboard was not the original motherboard I had in here. I had an MSI Pro V650M, a Wi-Fi motherboard, which built a computer, it posted, no issues, but for some reason, every so often I'd fire up the PC and it would not post. It would tell me that I had RAM issues. So I would reseat the RAM, it would post, then it would do it again. And then all of a sudden my graphics card started having connection issues. It was not connecting correctly. Yes, it was seated correctly because I even had the Memory Express check it for me, and it was seated correctly. Long story short, at first I thought it was my graphics card causing issues, so I dropped the graphics card off to get tested. It was cleared and all good. Determined it was the motherboard, dropped the motherboard off. There were some issues going on there. So in the meantime, they switched me out because the other one wasn't available anymore, and I did something that I think everybody should do if it's available: purchase the warranty. It saves you the hassle of going through the manufacturer. With Memory Express's case, it's a 5-day turnaround. If something goes wrong within 5 days, you'll either get a replacement or repaired. It's phenomenal, and it's worth its weight in gold, and it's much cheaper to spend 40 or 50 bucks on that warranty than it is several $100s to replace that component, or wait 6 months to deal with the manufacturer to fix it or not fix it. As we know, some of them, poor customer service, poor warranty system in place. So I purchased this motherboard. Shouldn't say purchased. I was given this motherboard to replace it because the other one was not available. This is the only other micro ATX motherboard they had in stock. I'm absolutely blown away how well it looks in there. Again, I kind of like the white in the black case. It looks pretty sweet. I have no issues whatsoever. However, this gets into one of the issues that I found with the computer, whether it was this motherboard or the last motherboard, which also goes back to why the motherboard and the GPU were checked and the processor and the other things on the computer were checked, and all found to be no issues related to this thing I was having. And that was, and I'm going to put a clip in here at the end showing that, or somewhere in here if I can. Basically what was happening was, when plugged into my motherboard, my display port cord or my HDMI cable, plugged into my motherboard, the computer ran flawlessly. No stutters, no issues, no problems loading, no flickering screen, nothing like that. However, when I would plug into the graphics card and I would do something anywhere from watching YouTube, Instagram, Google search, anything like that, except for actually gaming, I would get horrible flickering. The screen would go black repeatedly, multiple times, over and over again. And then the computer would just totally freeze for 3 minutes, and then it would go back to as if nothing happened. And I tried checking my BIOS, that was updated, checked my Windows, that was updated, checked everything, my GPU drivers, my everything from my Wi-Fi drivers up. I checked everything was updated, good to go. Okay, can't be that issue. Contacted Memory Express. They had me bring in the whole system. They tested it, and over 2 tests, they were the first time able to replicate the problem, and the second time not able to replicate it, but doing the same things. And their determination was, okay, it's possible you've got a bad driver in there, get rid of your drivers, reinstall it. I did that. Well, some of that. I did the drivers they told me to, which was my BIOS, they told me to redo, and they told me to do a hard reset or a full reset on my Windows, which I did. And they had said that the problem would resolve itself with that. However, it did not. The issue actually got worse. I went back in there, and it was at the point where they kind of threw their hands in the air and said, we have no idea what's going on. Maybe turn to YouTube or Reddit or something and see what can come of it. I posted it online, the problem, in a video, and all the things people were telling me to do was not working. And it was at the point where I was getting frustrated and started to feel defeated. I just spent this kind of money to build this thing, and I'm having issues now. I can't use the computer for that. It was especially embarrassing when I tried to show my wife the computer. She tried to check her Instagram and she got the flickering. I tried both an Ethernet and a Wi-Fi connection. I tried 2 different displays, tried different display cords, HDMI and DisplayPort, same issues. So I was essentially just broken. I quit turning on the computer for a few days, and then I thought, let's just go back into Memory Express and ask somebody new that I don't recognize the question and see if they can help me. So I went in, asked him a question, and his was a little more extravagant, or a little more crazy, of saying that I need to completely erase the computer or wipe everything off the computer, clear the SSD, do a fresh install of Windows, all this other stuff. But I'd lose everything I have because I didn't even have a flash drive to save some of the stuff. So I pondered that and pondered that. And in the meantime, I'd sold a spare computer part to somebody, and asked this guy who was maybe 19 years old, but had been building computers since he was 12. And I asked him the issue I'm having, and he said, I don't really know what to do to fix it, but what you should do is go into your Windows, sign in, go to, I think it's device manager called, go find find your graphics card, and do a complete removal of the graphics card essentially off there, which is uninstalling the drivers. I forget the term that they use. Essentially completely cleared the graphics card off of the computer. Then he told me, once I've completed that, power down the computer, unplug the power cord, press and hold the power button for 20 seconds to power drain it, wait a little bit, plug it back in, power it on, see what happens. And then when I signed into it, go into the driver's web page for the specific card. So I went into the, I believe it was Asus's driver's page, found for the 9070 card. I clicked the auto detect and install download thing for the drivers, downloaded that program, ran it, it updated the program. Long story short, it did all that. Screen flickered a little bit during it, which it said it was expected. And guess what? The problem resolved itself. I have not had the problem since. I've tried to put this thing through its paces to try to get to do it again, and it's not. So that fixed itself. The lesson out of that, and sorry for the long ranting, is building your first computer can be one of the most exciting things ever, and I was so excited to build it. It was probably one of the funnest things I've ever done, especially over the last couple months that I've had. It's been brutal. That was a great way to just relieve some stress and have some fun. So don't be discouraged by issues to not build your computer. You should still build it. Building this thing was amazing. It was so fun. But then on the other side of that too, I also learned the valuable lesson, or the valuable trait of patience, because through all the issues I was having, I was getting frustrated. I was feeling defeated, worn out, thinking there's no way of fixing this. My computer is cursed. I am done. I've wasted my money. And at the end of that, I ended up coming out of it with a resolution. So I think the first valuable tip I want to share with people is, when you build your computer, if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. Any issue with this thing can be fixed in some way or another. If it's a broken or faulty part, it can be changed or replaced. If it's a software issue like I was having, it can be rectified by an update or an uninstall and reinstall. There's always ways to fix problems. So it's a valuable thing I learned. The next thing now is, when I touched on my build list and the build that I have now being totally different, that was not a lie. Now, I broke one of the rules that I'd said in one of my tips of building a PC thing, of saying, set a budget and stick to it. I didn't follow that, but I'm also going to specify why. Now, I had set a budget of $2,000 Canadian to build a computer. Well, originally it started at $1,800, but then went up to $2,000. And why I jumped into that was, I noticed that with Memory Express, there was a bundle deal, so I could get the RAM, the processor, and the motherboard for about a $300 savings. So instantly, I was able to, instead of getting a 7600 or 7600X, I was able to go up to a 7700X, an 8-core processor, which was, I think, a valuable step up in a processor there, because it's just a little bit more juice, a little more power with whatever I choose to do with this thing. Now with their graphics card, there's a rule going around online that you spend a third of your budget on the graphics card. Pretty close to that. This graphics card, I think, cost me $880 with the warranty. The cheapest 9070 XT was $1,100 plus the taxes plus the warranty. I just didn't see the difference, especially when the Memory Express guy told me that there was only about a 5 to 10% difference in performance. I didn't see the justification spending that kind of money on that, especially given that this is my first computer. I don't know what a ultra powerful computer does because I've never witnessed it. Same as with 4K. I'm more than happy with 1440p or 1080p, high refresh rate, and being perfect. Now, one thing that I will say that caused my budget to blow over the $2,000 was this power supply, which is inside of the cage here, but it is a Corsair SF1000 power supply. It is a $350 power supply in Canada, maybe cheaper in the US or other places or in other parts of Canada, but that is what I paid for it. Now, this is the third power supply I've had in here. The first power supply I had was a Corsair RM750E power supply, which when I was starting to have my issues with the graphics card, I was told that it's possible that my power supply was not powerful enough, or it was pushing itself to its limits consistently to try to run this thing. So I changed that, went to this, sold it actually to another guy, and the power supply before that was a Lee & Lee SFX power supply, which happened to have some issues with the lighting on fire. Now, those problems might have been rectified. However, I did not want to find out that those problems weren't by wrecking my computer. So I got rid of that. I returned that to Amazon and ended up with this. You do not need to go with an SFX power supply, or better yet, a $350 power supply. You can get a more than capable power supply that's 750, 850 watts, for depending on your build, or 1,000 watts, and not have to spend that kind of money. If I got an 850 watt or 1,000 watt power supply, I could have probably dropped the the spending that I did on it by 150 bucks or more, especially if I went down to a 750 or 850. So you do not need to do that. There's also a problem with putting an SFX power supply in this case, based on where I mounted it. Now, if I mounted it in here, maybe it wouldn't have been such an issue, but that is the cable length. The cables, some of them fit, no problem. My power connector for my 24 pin for my GPU fits, no problem, plenty of length. I actually had to spool it up a little bit. My 2 graphics card cables, plenty of length. However, the power connector for the GPU is stretched. I had to essentially route it up from this cage, up through there, and sling it across as far as I could, and I've got some flex, some movements. It's not totally tight. I don't know if you can see that, but definitely not enough to tuck the cable up in the top and hide it. So that cable is just kind of there. Don't mind my cable management. It's not the best, I know. Now, another thing I've learned with this case and with building a computer is choosing a case is very, very beneficial if you choose the right one, because choosing too small of a case on your first build can be an issue, or can cause issues, or can make things difficult. Choosing too big of a case can, I don't know, essentially I think the only issue with that is then your size. If that's not what you're chasing, if you don't want a massive computer, going with the biggest tower, probably another thing. Now, cable management wise, or building your components there, is probably much easier in a bigger case. Again, this being my only and first build, this is the only case I've ever built in. This case though, it's gorgeous, looks wonderful on the desk, looks amazing. I'll have some footage of around the sides to give an idea what it looks like. Building this in this thing was not easy, especially with cable management. There is no behind the motherboard spots to tuck cables away because it is just paper thin. I was able to fit a couple of my RGB cables that come off of my fans back there, and they are tucked, and they're tucked tight. I could not fit anything else back there if I really even wanted. So that's an issue right there. The other thing is, because of the limited area here and not having a designated hidden away compartment for your power supply is going here, or it's going back here, which instantly means you're gonna have a lot more cables to deal with because you don't have space to tuck away all those cables. I've seen some people put in covers here. They've 3D printed covers to hide them behind. I think it would look tacky. That's just personal preference. You can certainly do that and be fine, but being able to hide cables away would be nice. I'm happy with how the cable management turned out in the case. I think it could be better, but it could certainly be worse. When it comes to building in this case, zip ties are going to be your best friend, and pre-planning your build was another thing that I learned as I was putting this together. Now again, it only took me an hour and a half to build this computer. For my first build, I'm pretty proud of myself because I figured it was going to take 8 hours or more. First things that I did on this, there was an issue. I installed the fans before I put the motherboard in. First problem right there, because I've instantly given myself less room to be able to fit my screwdriver in there to screw in the motherboard to seat it. So if you're building this case, put your motherboard in there first. Next thing that I did that I would change, don't install the cooler on the motherboard and processor and then install it in the computer. Install the motherboard into the computer case, into your PC case, then install the cooler if you're using a big cooler like this, because the moment this is in there, you'll see I've got about 2 fingers width of room to be able to reach in, plug in my CPU cable, tuck my fans away, because again, if you're doing it the most efficient or the easiest way of building a computer, you're putting the motherboard in first, then you're putting the fans after. Well, you've instantly created yourself a problem because it's very, very difficult to cable manage and tuck stuff away when you've got this big boy in the way. And then you've got to put your fans in there, you've got to route the cables and hide them and tuck them away and plug them in and all that stuff. So one of the things I would definitely do different is install this after the motherboard is in the case. I did not do that. I had to learn the hard way. That's okay. We got her done though. Another thing, if you're going to put fans on the bottom of the computer, now I checked my temps before and after because there's some debate online that putting fans on the bottom for intake can actually hurt the GPU's temperature or increase the temperature of the GPU by doing this. I tested it for a week without fans on the bottom and I tested it with fans on the bottom. There's a 1.5 degree difference, and it's actually, in my case with this card, it's actually helped my graphics card temps. They're much lower. My graphics card doesn't seem to kick its fans on high gear as much now, as well as I think it just looks cool. I mean, I didn't want to go crazy RGB in a case like this because with the wood panel, which I could probably pull off to show you. No, I'll have to pull the top off. That's okay. We'll have some more clips coming in here. I didn't want to go crazy RGB because in a case like this, I felt black case, lots of RGB, but a wood panel, it might look just a little weird, like it doesn't put together. So I wanted to go with halo lights. BeQuiet's fans are amazing. They're super powerful. The ones on the top are high-speed ones. The ones on the back is just the regular 120. The ones on the bottom here are just Thermalright basic 120s. I think they go up to 1700 RPMs, which is more than enough, especially with the amount of fans in here. I did not put a fan here as I wanted to leave some room so I could put my graphics card support bracket, as well as have some cables still tucked in there without seating them on top of the fans or anything like that. Plus, there's nothing here I really need an intake for. This is pulling fresh air in from the front here because the fan is pointed out there, so that's pulling it in there. The fan on the back that would exhaust the heat out is going to come right up here and out to this fan, so I'm good there. CPU cooler, fans are blowing this way, and then that hot air is going to be taken by the exhaust and helped and pulled out to the back. As I have this set up right now as far as cooling goes, I think this is the best fit. I've ran it through Cinebench, I've ran it hardcore, so I've had gaming, I've been playing some games while having YouTube in the background, and it's ran totally fine. I've had no stuttering issues, I've had no thermal throttling, so it's went perfectly. Now, I am sorry this video is going on and on and on and on. I don't know how to really abbreviate my videos, and when I talk, man, do I just love to talk. So, let's summarize this up here. There's going to be some more videos to follow on specific things, some tips, some things like that. So, first computer is built. I blew my budget apart. Why I blew it apart is because I was able to step up in performance for not a whole lot of money more. I could have went with a 9060 XT and been fine, or a 5060 and been fine, and saved $300 or $400 on the graphics card there. However, I want to have something that I don't really got to upgrade for a while. Plus, I wanted to know what it's like to game at 1440p. This card does that no problem in every game, Cyberpunk included. And Cyberpunk 1440p, high settings, I was able to still get 100, just under 100 actually, for FPS playing the game. play Tony Hawk in here. Obviously that's not a crazy intensive game. I get really good FPS on there. Forza on 1440p settings, I was getting 350 FPS, which I don't know how accurate that is. It was just the high settings, not the ultra settings. It's not I don't think that's a crazy intensive game, but whatever it is, I was getting good FPS on it. I've had no stutteriness, no lags with this, nothing like that. Now that my software issue is fixed too, everything runs smooth on the computer. I've had no issues there. So, with all that said, my advice is, if you're thinking of building a computer, start saving and build that computer. And don't think just because I or another person went with certain components that you have to do that. You can gladly or happily get yourself a great computer with last gen stuff. Technically, I went last gen with my processor, but you could go to an AM4 and get plenty of performance that you could, I'm sure, have more than enough fun with. The graphics card, if there was a 7800 XT available, I would have certainly bought it. However, on eBay, the reselling market is insane. The price I paid for this was $100 more than a lightly used 7800 XT on eBay, plus $60 shipping, plus it being a used card and no option for warranty. I didn't want to take that risk. Not comfortable with that yet. So, all that being said, build yourself a computer if you wanted to do it. Have fun with it. It was honestly such a fun experience. I wish I had somebody I could have shared that with. If you've got a kid or a friend and they're thinking about this stuff, or they like gaming or anything like that, or even just want to learn a little more about tech, have them build a computer with you, because guess what? It's probably the funnest thing I've ever done. One of the funnest things for sure. And you really, at the end of the day, when you hit that power button and that thing posts, my God, that's a feeling like I can't even explain how good of a feeling that was to see that green light come on. It was amazing. So thank you guys for the ones that have stayed subscribed to me in this year hiatus. Thank you to the ones who have watched this. I've got tons more videos coming. They're probably going to be irregularly coming because my work schedule is insane. I work 130 to 150 hours every 2 weeks, so I will fit a video in wherever I can. But in the meantime, if you have any questions for me, any tips, tricks, anything like that, any advice or tips or stuff for me or for viewers or for people who are looking in the comments, please drop those down below, because I want this to be a welcoming community. We're all here to help each other. We're all here to have some fun, spend a little money, but have some fun and enjoy ourselves when building a computer, gaming on a computer, doing whatever you want on the computer, content creation, whatever it might be. Looking at the latest gossip. You got a good computer, you can have fun looking at your gossip now. So guys, I want to thank you again for tuning in, watching this video. Stay tuned, we got more coming, and hopefully in the near future I can do some more fun stuff, maybe some giveaways or something. But I don't know how big this is gonna get or how many views it's gonna get, and I don't care. I'm doing this for me to have some fun. So I hope you had fun watching this, and we'll see you guys later. I'm out.